All right, returning now to our top story, Iran. Senator Lindsey Graham says the deadly unrest there is proof that the previous administration's approach failed.
Well, it tells us that the Obama approach of relieving sanctions, hoping the regime would moderate, has failed. The people are not getting the benefit of sanctions relief. They're more upset with their oppressors than ever. The money from sanction relief has gone into rebuilding the Iranian military, and they're destabilizing the Mideast.
All right, for reaction to this and more, let's turn to Republican Congressman from Utah, Chris Stewart. Congressman, thanks for joining us tonight.
Good evening. Happy New Year.
And to you as well. What do you make of what we've been seeing playing out in Iran the last few days?
Well, I think Senator Graham has it exactly right. I mean, we have an opportunity here to correct one of the great failures of the previous administration. And that is President Obama was so blindly committed, so determined to create this Iranian nuclear agreement that he kowtowed to the mullahs, he kowtowed to the ruling elites, and he entirely forgot about the Iranian people. They know that now. We see the economic impacts that it's had on their lives, and we understand why they're beginning to rise up.
This is what the president tweeted today. He says Iran is failing at every level despite the terrible deal made with them by the Obama administration. The great Iranian people have been repressed for many years. They are hungry for food and for freedom along with human rights. The wealth of Iran is being looted. Time for change. So Senator Graham did praise the president, saying he's been striking the right tone in talking about the Iranian people and in these tweets. But he said, you got to follow that up. There now has to be a plan that is spelled out. There's been talk of the president giving a speech, identifying exactly what steps could be taken to help these folks. What do you make of that?
Well, let's talk about the things that we know don't work. You know, I was surprised to hear when you reported Susan Rice says that presidents should remain quiet. That's what President Obama did during the Velvet Revolution, and we know what happened there. It failed utterly because the people felt like they had been abandoned by the American people and, frankly, by the world community. That doesn't work. We know that won't work. Second thing, and I think this is so important to recognize, we've sent billions of dollars to the Iranian leaders as a result of the agreement that we talked about a moment ago. Billions of dollars. Now think about this. About $450 million of it was sent to them in cash. Literally a plane load of euros and dollars. And why was that? It was because they wanted to have that cash to funnel it to Hezbollah, to funnel it to Hamas, to funnel it to the IRGC and other terrorist organizations. That money wasn't going to be going to the Iranian people. They wanted it in cash so they can funnel it, it wouldn't be traced. And again, the Iranian people were promised that the sanctions relief would make an economic difference in their lives. It just simply hasn't. The mullahs aren't honest with their own people. They haven't been honest with the American people. And again, we're seeing the result of that.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, then Secretary of State John Kerry said something to the effect that there was no way to guarantee that some of that cash wouldn't flow into these terrorist organizations or bad actors. I want to ask you as well about another foreign policy hotspot, which is North Korea. We have a little bit from Kim Jong-un talking about exactly what kind of threat he has. He says he has a nuclear button now, and he says this about reaching the U.S.
The entire U.S. mainland is within the range of our nuclear strike, and the button for the nuclear strike is always on the table in my office. They should clearly know that this is certainly not a threat, but rather a reality.
So where do we go with North Korea?
Oh my gosh, it's a challenge, isn't it? I don't think that he has a button sitting on his desk with nuclear missiles capable of reaching the U.S. quite yet, but he's very, very close. And the president has made it clear, and I completely agree with him, he will not allow North Korea, he will not allow Kim Jong-un to threaten and to blackmail and to take not one or two U.S. cities, but literally dozens of U.S. cities and destroy them if he were to choose to. He can't allow that to happen. You ask, what do we do? I think the sanctions, and it has to start with sanctions and with diplomatic efforts. And it was interesting, as we've seen, some of these oil tankers that have been, secretly refueling North Korea. Look, if you think China wasn't aware of that, then you don't understand the Chinese leaders. They're certainly aware. They're aware of everything that happens within their country. They're certainly aware if they had some ships that were going out and refueling these North Korean tankers. I think they were testing us. When I say they, I mean in this case the Chinese leaders. They have pledged they would enforce these sanctions, but they haven't been honest with us in the past. And again, I think they were testing us to see if we'd hold them accountable. As you know, we've impounded 2 of those ships now. President Trump has been very clear in the world community saying, calling Chinese leaders out on this, pointing out what they've done. It's important that he does that. But we have to keep the pressure on, and we've got to keep the pressure on the Chinese as well.
And also North Korea, and we're going to talk a little bit more coming up about whether a blockade is a possibility there, whether it would work, whether it's effective, whether you could even pull it off, and who would have to cooperate in order to get that done over there. But in the meantime, Kim Jong-un also said that he's willing to have talks now with South Korea, and they have said, essentially, some leaders there, the door's always been open. If we thought there was a way that we could work on this, we'd be willing to have conversations. Kim Jong-un saying it's time for both sides to ratchet down the military tension. Do you think it would be helpful for those two sides to get together? Can it bring about effective change?
Well, it's obviously something we want to encourage, but we need to do it with our eyes wide open. We can't be naive. I was a young Air Force captain flying the B-1 when we were told by then President Clinton, because we were preparing for strikes against North Korea at that time, this is in the mid-90s, and President Clinton held up an agreement and says, no, it's not necessary. We've got this agreement. The North Koreans will never have nuclear weapons. And, of course, that wasn't true, and we failed in that policy. And they're very, very good about using negotiations in order to stall for time while they continue with the development of their nuclear programs or their missile programs. So as long as we're aware of that and we don't go into this blindly, but again, what we're trying to do is to force him to the table. So let's not take any, if he does present an olive leaf, let's not take that and brush it aside. Let's sincerely try to engage him, but let's do it, as I said, in a mature and showing judgment that recognizes they're not always honest with us. In fact, they're rarely honest with us. We don't want them to delay these negotiations just so he can complete his missile program.
Congressman Chris Stewart, thank you very much for weighing in with us on this New Year's Day. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.